Learning English is a journey that requires dedication, patience, and the right mindset. Many people start with enthusiasm, but quickly become discouraged when they don't see immediate progress. The key is to understand that language learning is a gradual process. At the beginning, you may feel lost, struggling to form sentences or understand simple phrases. However, just like a child learning to speak their native language, progress comes with time and practice. The first step is to set clear goals. Do you want to speak fluently, understand movies, or write with confidence? Defining your objectives will help you stay motivated and track your improvement. One of the most effective ways to start learning English is by immersing yourself in the language as much as possible. Surround yourself with English materials such as books, podcasts, movies, and music. Even if you don't understand everything at first, exposure to the language will help your brain get used to its structure and sounds. Try to read simple texts, listen to basic conversations, and pay attention to how words are pronounced. The more you engage with the language, the more natural it will feel over time. Immersion creates familiarity, and familiarity breeds confidence. Another crucial step in learning English is practicing daily. Consistency is the secret to mastering any skill, and language learning is no exception. Set aside a specific time each day to study English, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour. Make a habit of speaking, listening, reading, and writing in English. You don't have to be perfect. The goal is to communicate. Even if you make mistakes, every effort counts toward improvement. Keeping a journal in English, having conversations with native speakers, or using language apps can help reinforce what you learn. The more you practice, the faster you will see progress. Fear of making mistakes often holds learners back from speaking English. Many people hesitate because they are afraid of being judged or misunderstood. However, mistakes are an essential part of the learning process. Every mistake is an opportunity to improve. Instead of avoiding difficult words or complicated sentences, embrace the challenge. Speak as much as you can, even if you're not confident. The more you use English in real-life situations, the more comfortable you will become. Remember, even native speakers make mistakes. The important thing is to keep going and never let fear stop you. Lastly, finding the right motivation is key to staying committed to learning English. Ask yourself why you want to learn the language. Is it for career opportunities, travel, or personal growth? Keeping your goal in mind will push you forward when you feel frustrated or stuck. Also, make learning fun by incorporating your interests into your studies. If you love music, learn English songs. If you enjoy movies, watch them with subtitles. When learning is enjoyable, it becomes easier to stay consistent. The journey to fluency is long, but with determination, you can achieve your goal. Chapter 2, Building a Strong Foundation. The foundation of any language is vocabulary and grammar. Without a good grasp of these elements, communicating effectively can be difficult. The first step is to build a solid vocabulary. Start by learning the most common words and phrases used in everyday conversations. Flashcards, mobile apps, and word lists are great tools to expand your vocabulary. However, simply memorizing words is not enough. You need to use them in context. Try creating sentences with new words, speaking them out loud, and incorporating them into your daily conversations. Repetition and usage will help reinforce your memory. Grammar is another crucial aspect of learning English. While some people argue that grammar isn't necessary for communication, understanding basic rules can help prevent confusion. Focus on learning fundamental structures, such as verb tenses, sentence patterns, and word order. Instead of trying to memorize complicated rules, practice through examples and exercises. Reading English books, listening to native speakers, and writing regularly will help you internalize grammar naturally. The more you expose yourself to correct sentence structures, the easier it will be to use them correctly. Listening skills are often overlooked, but are essential for mastering English. Many learners struggle to understand native speakers because of their speed and pronunciation. To improve listening skills, start by listening to slow and clear English, such as audiobooks, podcasts, or beginner-friendly videos. As you become more comfortable, challenge yourself with faster and more complex conversations. Focus on keywords, intonation, and speech patterns. Watching movies with subtitles can also help bridge the gap between written and spoken English. Over time, your brain will adjust, making comprehension easier. Reading is a powerful way to improve all aspects of English, from vocabulary to comprehension. Choose materials that match your level, such as children's books, news articles, or short stories. Read actively by highlighting new words, taking notes, and summarizing what you read. The more you read, the more you'll recognize common phrases and grammatical structures. Eventually, reading will become effortless, and you'll develop a natural understanding of how English is used in different contexts. Reading is also a great way to absorb new words and expressions without memorizing them directly. Finally, writing helps reinforce everything you learn. Start by keeping a daily journal in English, describing your thoughts, experiences, or goals. Writing allows you to practice sentence structure, spelling, and coherence. Don't worry about making mistakes. Instead, focus on expressing yourself clearly. Over time, review your writing and try to correct errors. If possible, ask a native speaker or teacher to provide feedback. Writing regularly will improve your confidence and ability to communicate in English effectively. The more you write, the easier it will become. Chapter 3: The Power of Consistency. One of the most important factors in learning English successfully is consistency. Many learners start with excitement, but after a few weeks, they lose motivation because they don't see immediate results. Learning a language is like building a muscle. It requires daily effort and patience. Even if you study for just 30 minutes a day, it is much better than studying for 5 hours once a week. The key is to create a habit. When English becomes part of your daily routine, progress happens naturally, and learning feels easier over time. To stay consistent, set realistic and achievable goals. Instead of saying, I want to be fluent in 6 months, break it down into smaller steps. For example, aim to learn 5 new words each day. Listen to an English podcast for 15 minutes, or have a short conversation in English. These small goals create a sense of achievement and keep you motivated. Keeping a journal of your progress can also help. Write down new words, mistakes you made, and things you learned. Looking back at your progress will show you how much you have improved. Another important aspect of consistency is creating an environment that encourages learning. If you surround yourself with English every day, your brain will start processing it naturally. Change your phone and social media settings to English. Watch TV shows with English subtitles and listen to English music. Even when you are not actively studying, your brain will absorb the language. This passive exposure makes it easier to recall words and phrases when you need them. One common challenge learners face is boredom. Doing the same type of study every day can become repetitive, making it harder to stay consistent. To avoid this, mix different learning methods. Some days, focus on listening by watching English videos. Other days, practice speaking by talking with a language partner. Reading books, writing essays, and playing language games can also keep learning fun. The more you enjoy the process, the more likely you are to stay consistent. Finally, remember that mistakes are part of learning. Many learners get frustrated when they forget words or make grammar errors. Instead of feeling discouraged, see mistakes as opportunities to improve. Every time you correct a mistake, you are one step closer to fluency. The most successful learners are not those who never make mistakes, but those who never give up. By staying consistent, patient, and motivated, you will see continuous progress in your English journey. Chapter 4: Overcoming Language Barriers. Learning English is an exciting challenge, but many learners struggle with different barriers that slow down their progress. One of the biggest obstacles is understanding native speakers. People speak fast, use contractions, and mix slang with formal language. This can be frustrating, but the key is to stay patient and practice active listening. Instead of trying to understand every single word, focus on the main ideas. Train your ears by listening to different English accents, from American and British to Australian and Canadian. The more exposure you get, the more comfortable you'll become with real-life conversations. Another common challenge is pronunciation. Many learners fear speaking because they worry about making mistakes or sounding strange. The best way to improve pronunciation is through imitation. Listen to native speakers and repeat after them. Shadowing exercises, where you mimic a speaker word for word, can help improve fluency and accent. Additionally, use pronunciation apps or online tools to check if you're pronouncing words correctly. The goal is not to sound perfect, but to be clear and understandable. Over time, as you practice, your confidence in speaking will grow. Grammar can also be a frustrating barrier. Many learners struggle with verb tenses, sentence structure, and prepositions. Instead of memorizing complex rules, focus on learning grammar naturally through context. Pay attention to how native speakers use grammar in conversations, books, and TV shows. Practice writing and speaking in full sentences, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. The more you use a language, the more intuitive grammar will become. Remember, even native speakers sometimes make grammar mistakes, so don't let perfectionism stop you from practicing. Fear of speaking is another major barrier. Many learners hesitate to talk because they don't want to be judged. However, the only way to improve is by using English as much as possible. Find language partners, join conversation groups, or practice speaking alone by recording yourself. Mistakes are a natural part of the learning process, and every mistake is a step toward improvement. The more you speak, the more comfortable and confident you will become. Fluency is about communication, not perfection. Finally, staying motivated can be difficult, especially when progress feels slow. Learning a language takes time, and there will be moments of frustration. The key is to find ways to keep learning enjoyable. Watch your favorite shows in English, read books that interest you, and talk to people who inspire you. Set small goals, such as learning 10 new words a day or having a 5-minute conversation in English. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small. The journey to fluency is long, but with persistence and the right mindset, you can overcome any barrier. Chapter 5, Achieving Fluency and Beyond. Fluency in English is not about knowing every word or speaking without mistakes. It's about being able to communicate your thoughts clearly and naturally. The final step to mastering English is making it a part of your daily life. The more you use a language, the more natural it will feel. Start thinking in English instead of translating from your native language. This will help you respond faster in conversations and build confidence in speaking. The goal is to make English second nature, so that you don't have to struggle to find words when communicating. A great way to accelerate fluency is by surrounding yourself with English. Change the language settings on your phone, computer, and social media to English. Read news articles, listen to English podcasts, and watch English videos every day. The more you immerse yourself, the more you will improve without even realizing it. Learning should not be limited to study time. Make it a part of your daily routine. Even small efforts, like reading English menus or writing to-do lists in English, can have a big impact over time. Practicing with native speakers is one of the most effective ways to reach fluency. Join online language exchange programs, participate in discussion groups, or take online classes. If you can, travel to an English-speaking country and use English in real-life situations. Speaking regularly with fluent speakers will help you develop a natural rhythm and expand your vocabulary. Even if you don't have direct access to native speakers, you can practice by talking to yourself or recording your voice to analyze your pronunciation. To stay fluent, you need to continue learning and challenging yourself. Set new goals, such as reading a novel in English, giving a presentation, or watching a movie without subtitles. Learning a language is a lifelong process, and there is always something new to discover. Stay curious and keep pushing your limits. The more you challenge yourself, the more confident and fluent you will become. In the end, fluency is about expressing yourself freely and comfortably in English. There is no final destination, only continuous improvement. With dedication, practice, and the right mindset, you will not only achieve fluency, but also open new doors in life. Whether for career opportunities, travel, or personal growth, mastering English is a skill that will always benefit you. Keep practicing, stay motivated, and enjoy the journey. When I first realized I needed to improve my English, I felt both excited and overwhelmed. I had learned a few words in school, watched some movies with subtitles, and even tried listening to English music, but I couldn't speak fluently. My sentences felt broken, and I always hesitated when I tried to talk. I knew vocabulary, but I couldn't put my thoughts together quickly. People would ask me simple questions like, "How are you?" or "What do you do?" And I would freeze, trying to find the right words. I wanted to speak naturally, but I didn't know where to start. At first, I believed that grammar was the most important thing. I spent hours memorizing grammar rules, studying verb tenses, and reading textbooks. But the more I studied, the more I realized that I couldn't use any of it in real conversation. I could write yes, but I couldn't speak fluently. I would pause, think too much, and forget what I wanted to say. It was frustrating because I was working hard but not getting results. Something was missing, and I had to find out what it was. One day, I watched a video where someone said, "Fluency is not about knowing every rule. It's about using the language every day." That sentence changed everything for me. I began to understand that improving my English wasn't about being perfect. It was about practicing regularly, even if I made mistakes. I decided to take a new approach. Instead of focusing only on grammar, I would focus on listening, speaking, reading, and writing every single day. I wanted to live with English, not just study it. I made a simple plan. Each day, I would listen to English for 30 minutes. speak for 15 minutes, read something new, and write at least 5 sentences. It didn't sound like much, but it was consistent. I chose topics I enjoyed: music, travel, and personal stories. That made everything easier. I stopped worrying about sounding perfect and started to enjoy the process. Every time I listened or spoke, I felt like I was building a bridge to fluency, one brick at a time. After a few weeks, I started to see small changes. I understood conversations more easily. I could say simple sentences without thinking too hard. My confidence started to grow. I wasn't fluent yet, but I was finally moving in the right direction. I knew that with time, patience, and daily practice, my English would continue to improve. I had taken the first step, and that gave me the motivation to keep going. Chapter 2: Building Daily Habits. Creating daily habits was harder than I thought. At first, I was excited and full of energy, but after a few days, life started to get in the way. Some mornings I felt tired. Some nights I was busy, and there were days when I just didn't feel like studying. But I reminded myself of my goal: to speak English fluently. I didn't want to lose motivation. So I looked for ways to make the process easier and more enjoyable. I started using a calendar and marked every day I practiced. Seeing my progress visually gave me a sense of achievement and pushed me to continue. I realized that the key to fluency wasn't long study sessions. It was consistency. Even if I only practiced for 20 or 30 minutes a day, the important thing was not to skip days. I built my routine around small moments. I listened to English while cooking, practiced speaking when I walked alone, and read English blogs during lunch breaks. Slowly, English became part of my life, not just a subject I studied. I wasn't forcing myself anymore. I actually looked forward to it. Learning became natural, not stressful. To stay motivated, I chose materials that I truly liked. I started watching TV shows with subtitles, then watched them again without subtitles to test my understanding. I listened to podcasts about self-development and English learning. I found YouTubers who spoke clearly and shared useful tips. Their stories inspired me, and I started to feel like I wasn't alone. Many people around the world were learning English just like me, facing the same struggles and pushing through them. That gave me strength to keep going. I also discovered the importance of shadowing. It's a technique where you listen to someone speaking English and repeat exactly what they say right after them, copying their pronunciation and rhythm. At first, I felt silly doing it, but after a few days, I noticed that my pronunciation was improving. I wasn't just learning words. I was learning how to say them naturally. My mouth and brain started to get used to English sounds. It was like training muscles I had never used before. I kept repeating, practicing, and correcting myself. By the end of the second month, I was no longer afraid of English. I still made mistakes, but I didn't feel embarrassed anymore. I was making real progress. I could have short conversations, introduce myself clearly, and understand most of what people were saying in videos. I realized that learning a language is not about talent. It's about effort, mindset, and habits. I still had a long way to go, but I had built a strong foundation. Chapter 3, Speaking Without Fear. One of the biggest challenges I faced was speaking English with other people. I could read and listen, but when it came time to open my mouth, I felt nervous and insecure. My heart would beat fast, my hands would sweat, and sometimes I would forget even the simplest words. I knew I had to overcome this fear if I wanted to speak fluently. So I started looking for opportunities to speak, even if I felt scared. I joined a language exchange app and connected with people who were learning my native language. We helped each other, and that made it easier. In the beginning, I made a lot of mistakes. Sometimes I used the wrong words, or my sentences didn't make sense. But I quickly realized something important. Most people don't care about your mistakes. They care about communication. They listened patiently, helped me when I got stuck, and even encouraged me. Those conversations helped me gain confidence. I stopped worrying about being perfect and started focusing on expressing my ideas. Little by little, I started speaking more naturally and with less fear. To improve my fluency, I began talking to myself in English. I would describe what I was doing during the day, talk about my plans, or review what I had learned. This simple practice helped me think in English. Instead of translating from my native language, I started forming thoughts directly in English. It was a big change, and it made speaking easier. I also recorded myself and listened to recordings to find areas I could improve. Hearing my own voice in English was strange at first, but it helped me grow. Another great help was storytelling. I started telling simple stories about my life, things that happened at work, funny experiences with friends, or memories from childhood. I practiced these stories many times until I could tell them fluently. This gave me a group of ready-made sentences and phrases I could use in real conversations. It also helped me build my vocabulary in a more personal and emotional way. I wasn't just learning random words. I was learning the words that mattered to me. Over time, I noticed something amazing. The more I spoke, the more fluent I became. My words came faster, my sentences were smoother, and I started to use more natural expressions. I even started using phrasal verbs and idioms without thinking. My brain was adapting. Speaking English was no longer a stressful event. It was becoming a skill I could enjoy. I was proud of how far I had come, and I knew that the best was yet to come. Chapter 4, Listening and Thinking in English. Listening is a powerful skill, and I soon realized that improving my listening was key to becoming fluent. When I listened carefully, I picked up new words, learned natural sentence structures, and improved my pronunciation. I began listening to English every day, during breakfast on the bus, or while doing chores. At first, I didn't understand everything, but I didn't give up. I listened again and again until the sound started to make sense. Repetition was my friend. To get the most out of my listening practice, I chose content that was just a little above my level. If it was too easy, I didn't learn much. If it was too hard, I felt frustrated. But when it was slightly challenging, I learned quickly. I paused, rewound, and repeated sentences. I also used transcripts to read along as I listened. This helped me connect spoken and written English. Slowly, I started to understand more without needing subtitles. My ears were adjusting to language. One technique that helped me a lot was active listening. Instead of just hearing the sounds, I focused on every word, every phrase, and try to understand the meaning. I would write down new vocabulary and review it later. I also tried to predict what the speaker would say next. This made my brain more engaged and trained me to think in English. I wasn't just listening anymore. I was understanding and participating mentally in the conversation. As my listening improved, something magical happened. I started to think in English. It began with short phrases. I'm hungry, it's late, I should go now. Then it grew into full sentences and thoughts. I didn't have to translate everything in my head anymore. I could think directly in English, which made speaking much faster. My brain became used to English patterns, and I felt more connected to the language. It was like learning to swim. You stop thinking about the strokes and just move naturally. This shift changed everything. Thinking in English gave me freedom. I could speak faster, understand people better, and respond more naturally. I realized that fluency is not just about speaking quickly. It's about being comfortable inside the language. And the way to reach that comfort is through consistent listening, daily practice, and mental immersion. I felt closer to fluency than ever before, and I was ready to move forward with more confidence. Chapter 5: The Power of Reading and Writing. Reading was one of the most powerful tools that transformed my English. At first, I thought reading was just something people did to learn vocabulary, but I was wrong. The more I read, the more I understood how the language lives, how it flows, how sentences are structured, how ideas are developed, and how emotions are expressed. I started reading short stories, then moved to blog posts, then to full novels. Each page was like a classroom, and every paragraph taught me something new. I paid attention to how native speakers describe emotions, transitions between topics, and the natural way they express complex thoughts. Reading helped me feel the rhythm of English, which made me a better speaker as well. But I didn't just read passively. I became an active reader. I highlighted expressions I liked, wrote down unfamiliar words, and reread parts that felt important. More importantly, I began to imitate the writing style. I created my own sentences using the structures I had seen, like, I had no idea that, or, what surprised me the most was. This practice built a strong connection between what I read and how I expressed myself. And soon, I began to write every day. At first, it was just a few sentences about my day, my dreams, or my opinions. But with time, I started writing short stories, journal entries, and even essays. Writing gave me a chance to organize my thoughts in English and to see where I needed to improve. One major discovery was how writing allowed me to slow down my English thinking. While speaking required fast reactions, writing gave me space to reflect. I noticed my common grammar mistakes, repetitive words, and weak phrases. I could then correct them and rewrite better versions. This helped me become more conscious of how I form my sentences, which later improved my speaking too. The best part was that writing became a safe space. No pressure, no fear of judgment, just me and my thoughts in English. And when I shared some writings with native speakers, their feedback made me better. It was motivating to know I was being understood clearly. In time, reading and writing became my secret fluency boosters. While listening and speaking helped me interact with the world, reading and writing helped me understand the soul of the language. I saw how English is used to persuade, to tell stories, to express feelings, and to teach. I noticed idioms, cultural references, and humor. I understood how language isn't just words. It's a way of thinking. This made me fall in love with English more deeply. I wasn't just a learner anymore. I was becoming a communicator, a thinker in English. That shift gave me purpose and joy. By the end of my 5th month, I had developed a solid base. I practiced daily, listened with intent, spoke without fear, and built my thoughts through reading and writing. I had created an English environment around me. English was no longer a foreign language. It was becoming my language. I knew I still had areas to work on, but the gap between where I was and where I wanted to be was shrinking. I had momentum, and that was more powerful than perfection. Every mistake became a lesson, and every day felt like one step closer to true fluency. Chapter 6, Dealing with Frustration and Self-Doubt. As much as I loved the progress I was making, I would be lying if I said the journey was easy every day. There were many moments when I felt stuck, frustrated, and even questioned if I could ever truly become fluent. Some days, I would listen to a podcast and barely understand anything. Other days, I would try to speak and suddenly forget words I had just studied. Those moments hurt. I felt disappointed in myself, as if all my work had meant nothing. I began to compare myself to others who spoke better or faster, and that comparison stole my motivation. I started to feel like I wasn't good enough. But through those emotional struggles, I learned one of the most valuable lessons in language learning. Progress is not linear. It goes up and down, fast and slow. There are breakthroughs and plateaus. The human brain doesn't learn perfectly. It learns through repetition, correction, rest, and time. I realized that just because I had a bad day didn't mean I was a bad learner. In fact, those hard days were proof that I was pushing myself beyond my comfort zone. And that's where real growth happens. I decided to be kind to myself, to celebrate small wins, and to accept that frustration was part of the process. To stay mentally strong, I started journaling about my journey. I wrote about what I learned, what frustrated me, and how I felt. I also wrote about why I started learning English in the first place. This reminded me of my purpose. I wanted to travel, to work internationally, to make friends around the world and to understand cultures through their own voices. That dream became my fuel. I create affirmations like, I am improving every day, or my mistakes help me grow, and repeated them when I felt down. They might sound simple, but they gave me strength on days when my confidence was low. I also found support from others. I joined online communities of English learners and shared my challenges. I saw that I wasn't alone. Everyone faced doubts, and everyone needed encouragement sometimes. We helped each other by sharing tips, success stories, and failures. Sometimes just talking to someone who understood the struggle was enough to keep me going. I also started following language coaches and teachers online who talked about the mental side of language learning, not just the grammar. They reminded me that mindset is everything. Eventually, I learned how to turn frustration into fuel. Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, I saw them as information. Each forgotten word showed me what to review. Each confusing audio showed me where to improve. I started measuring success not by perfection, but by persistence. I knew that fluency wouldn't come overnight, but if I kept going, it would come. That deep belief gave me peace. It allowed me to enjoy the journey again, even when the path wasn't smooth. I stopped fighting with English, and instead, I became its partner. That mental shift changed everything. Chapter 7. Living the language every day. After months of steady practice, reflection, and emotional growth, something beautiful happened. English stopped feeling like a subject and started feeling like a lifestyle. I didn't need to remind myself to practice anymore. English had become part of my routine, part of my identity. I woke up and checked the weather in English. I talked to myself while getting dressed. I read the news, watched videos, and even dreamed in English. It wasn't just a goal anymore. It was how I lived. This immersion was not forced. It was natural, like switching to a new way of breathing. I created an environment around me where English was the default. I changed my phone and computer settings to English. I followed English-speaking creators online. I subscribed to newsletters, joined English discussion forums, and started following topics I cared about: technology, travel, psychology, all in English. This made learning feel effortless because I wasn't just studying, I was living through the language. Every article I read and every comment I posted strengthened my vocabulary and boosted my confidence. Even on lazy days, I was still surrounded by English. More than that, I started thinking about life in English. When I had deep thoughts, when I planned my week, when I asked myself questions, I used English words. This was the final and most powerful step. Thinking like a speaker, not a student. I stopped asking, am I saying this right? And started asking, what do I want to say? I stopped judging my level, and I started trusting my voice. Fluency, I realized, is not about speaking fast or knowing every word. It's about having the freedom to express yourself without fear, with clarity and emotion. By now, I had also inspired others around me. Friends started asking how I improved so much. I told them it wasn't magic. It was commitment. It was falling in love with the process, not chasing shortcuts. I shared my story, my struggles, and my systems. And I felt proud, not because I had become perfect, but because I had grown. I had faced every barrier, fear, doubt, confusion, and I kept going. That was the real success. My accent didn't matter. My mistakes didn't define me. What mattered was that I could connect, understand, and be understood. Looking back, I see now that fluency is not a destination. It's a journey of transformation. It's about who you become in the process. More patient, more open, more confident. English gave me more than a skill. It gave me access to the world, to stories, to ideas, and to people I never would have met otherwise. And the best part? I'm still learning every single day, because the journey never ends. And I wouldn't want it to. Chapter 8, Reaching the Advanced Level. After many months of constant practice and real immersion, I began to notice something I had always dreamed of. I could understand nearly everything I heard in English, whether it was a complex podcast about philosophy, a news report full of technical terms, or casual conversations in fast, connected speech. I was finally following along without effort. My brain didn't freeze anymore. I could guess meanings from context, recognize idiomatic expressions, and even catch jokes and sarcasm. This was the moment when I realized that I had moved beyond the intermediate stage. I was not just surviving in English, I was thriving. Reaching an advanced level wasn't about knowing every word or using perfect grammar. It was about flexibility. I could say things in more than one way. If I forgot a word, I could explain it with others. If someone asked me a complex question, I could respond clearly and naturally. My vocabulary had depth. Instead of always saying good, I could say fantastic, brilliant, impressive, or satisfying. My grammar became intuitive. I no longer had to think about rules. I had internalized them through practice. This made my speaking sound natural, and I could feel when others responded to me with ease and comfort. To keep pushing forward, I challenged myself with new types of content. I watched documentaries, read academic articles, and listened to interviews with thought leaders. I started using English to learn other things, like psychology, science, or history. This was the moment I stopped learning English for English's sake and started using it as a tool to expand my knowledge and worldview. I also took part in more advanced conversations, joining debates in online communities, writing essays with nuanced opinions, and even giving short talks in English. These experiences were uncomfortable at first, but they stretched me and helped me grow. One thing I paid close attention to was accuracy. At the advanced level, fluency is great, but accuracy matters more. I worked on reducing fossilized errors, those small mistakes that stick with you if you're not careful. For example, I used to say people as instead of people are, or he go instead of he goes. I recorded myself speaking and listened critically. I asked native speakers for honest feedback, even if it hurt. I wanted to polish my English like a diamond, keeping its shine while correcting its rough edges. This was hard work, but also rewarding because every correction brought me closer to excellence. By now, English was more than just a language for me. It had become a second skin. I could switch between casual and formal tone. I could adapt to different cultures and styles of communication. I started to notice how Americans speak differently from Brits, how Canadians use softer tones, how Australians use slang. These differences fascinated me. I realized that English is not just one language. It's many voices, many rhythms, many stories. And I had become part of it. That realization gave me pride, and it reminded me how far I had come. Chapter 9, Mastering Nuance and Expression. At this stage, my focus shifted to one of the most beautiful and subtle aspects of language, nuance. I didn't just want to be fluent. I wanted to be expressive, persuasive, and sensitive to tone and context. I wanted to sound more like a native speaker, not an accent, but in how I said things. I began to study how people soften their opinions, how they express disagreement without being rude, and how they use humor, sarcasm, or metaphors. These are the tools of true mastery. When your words don't just deliver a message, but carry emotion, respect, or charm. I started collecting phrases that helped me sound more natural. Instead of saying, "I don't agree," I would say, "I see your point, but I have a different perspective." Instead of saying, "You are wrong," I would say, "That's an interesting view, though I see it slightly differently." These small changes made a big impact on how others reacted to me. They respected my communication style. I was not just speaking English. I was connecting with people through it. I also learned to play with tone, using rhythm and pauses when speaking and stressing certain words to show contrast or emotion. It was like learning the music of English. Another major development was mastering storytelling. I practiced telling stories from my life. Funny ones, meaningful ones, even embarrassing ones. I learned how to set the scene, build tension, and end with a strong point. I watched TED Talks, stand-up comedian, and podcasts to study how great storytellers use their voice and vocabulary. This helped me become more engaging in conversations. People listened when I spoke. They laughed, asked questions, and remembered what I said. That felt amazing because it meant I was not just fluent. I was memorable. Of course, mastering nuance also required cultural understanding. I paid attention to how people use body language, how they joked, how they apologized or complimented. I noticed that in some cultures, directness is appreciated, while in others, politeness matters more. Understanding this helped me communicate not just in English, but with English speakers from many backgrounds. I became more adaptable, more respectful, and more aware. That awareness didn't just make me a better speaker. It made me a better listener, a better learner, and a better human being. Reaching this level of expression was one of the most satisfying parts of my journey. I no longer felt like an outsider in the English-speaking world. I felt like a full participant, able to express my thoughts with color, detail, and impact. I could inspire, persuade, joke, and empathize all through English. And I knew that this kind of mastery didn't come from luck. It came from years of practice, reflection, and passion. It came from loving the language, not just studying it. And that love grew stronger every day. Chapter 10, Fluency for Life. By the 10th stage of my journey, I had come to a powerful realization. Learning English wasn't something I had finished. It was something I had embraced for life. Like any meaningful relationship, it would continue to grow, evolve, and challenge me. I didn't need to chase perfection anymore. Instead, I focused on enjoying the fluency I had earned and continuing to use English as a key part of my daily world. Whether it was watching international films, working remotely with global teams, or making friends from every continent, English had opened doors I never imagined possible. One of the biggest changes in my life was professional. Because of my fluency, I began to apply for jobs that required high-level English. I participated in interviews, gave presentations, and led meetings in English, all with confidence. I didn't just translate my ideas. I delivered them powerfully. My co-workers saw me as capable, and I felt proud knowing that English had helped me level up in my career. I also started mentoring others who were learning English, sharing my tips and encouraging them during their struggles. Helping others reminded me of how far I had come in my personal life. English gave me access to a world of culture. I read books I had only heard of before. I watched theater productions, listened to global music, and joined book clubs online. I made friendships that felt deep and honest, even though we didn't share a first language. English became the bridge between my heart and theirs. These connections made me richer, not in money, but in experience and humanity. Every conversation taught me something new. Every shared moment was proof that language, when used with care, brings people together. But perhaps the most meaningful reward was internal. I had changed. I had become someone who believed in long-term growth, who didn't give up when things were hard, who found joy in small progress and beauty in every mistake. Learning English had reshaped my character. It taught me patience, discipline, and empathy. It taught me to keep going even when the results were invisible. And that lesson stayed with me, not just in language learning, but in life. It became part of who I was. So, as I write this final chapter, I want to say something to anyone who is on this path. Fluency is not a final destination. It's a way of living. Keep using English. Keep challenging yourself. Keep falling in love with the process. Because with every word you speak, every idea you express, and every heart you touch, you are not just learning a language. You are becoming the kind of person who can learn anything. Ever since she was a little girl, Emma had dreamed of exploring the world. She would sit on the floor of her bedroom in Barcelona, looking through magazines filled with pictures of London buses, New York skyscrapers, and Australian beaches. But there was always one thing holding her back. She didn't speak English well. Every time she thought about traveling, she imagined herself lost in a foreign country, unable to ask for directions or order food. That fear kept her grounded for years. But one day she woke up with a strong decision. It was time to change her life, no matter how hard it would be. She packed a small suitcase, kissed her parents goodbye, and booked a one-way ticket to London. Arriving in London was both exciting and terrifying. The airport was loud and full of people speaking quickly, using words she barely understood. Emma tried to remember her English lessons from school, but nothing seemed to come out naturally. Still, she managed to ask the kind woman how to reach her hostel. It was a small victory, but it gave her the confidence to try again. She smiled, nodded a lot, and repeated phrases she had memorized the night before. Everything around her felt new and unfamiliar. The streets, the weather, even the way people walked and talked. But there was a strange beauty in the challenge, something that made her heart race with hope. Her first days in London were not easy. She got lost more than once, ordered the wrong food at restaurants, and misunderstood simple questions. However, instead of giving up, Emma used every mistake as a lesson. She carried a small notebook where she wrote down new words and phrases. Every evening, she would sit in a quiet corner of the hostel's lounge and practice pronunciation with a British map in front of her. Other travelers noticed her dedication and began helping her. One guy from Canada corrected her grammar, while a girl from India practiced speaking with her over tea. Emma realized she wasn't alone. Many people around the world were also trying to learn English, and they all had their own struggles and stories. Soon, she began to enjoy the process. She visited museums and listened to audio guides in English. She joined free walking tours where guides shared stories about the history of the city. And even though she didn't understand everything, she tried her best to follow along. She started to think in English, even if just a little, and began forming simple sentences in her mind throughout the day. She noticed that when she stopped translating from Spanish and just felt the language, things became easier. For the first time, English was no longer a subject. It was a tool that connected her to people, to places, and to her dreams. After 2 months in London, Emma felt different. She wasn't fluent yet, but she could communicate without fear. She made friends, laughed at English jokes, and even helped another tourist who was struggling with directions. It was then that she decided she didn't want this journey to end. London had been just the beginning. There were other countries to visit, new cultures to discover, and more English to learn. She opened her laptop one morning and typed, "Cheap flights to Canada." Her next destination was calling, and she was ready. Chapter 2, Across the Ocean. Emma arrived in Toronto on a cold morning. The air was crisp and the sky was a soft gray, but her excitement kept her warm. Unlike London, where people seemed a bit reserved, Toronto felt more open and diverse from the start. At the airport, she heard English spoken with many different accents, some Canadian, some Indian, some Caribbean, and it reminded her that English was a global language, not just a British or American one. It comforted her to know that there was no perfect way to speak, only a way that others could understand. Her confidence grew as she realized that she didn't need to sound like a native speaker. She only needed to express herself clearly and respectfully. She checked into a small shared apartment downtown and began exploring the city. Emma quickly signed up for a language exchange group that met twice a week at a cozy cafe. There, she met people from South Korea, Brazil, France, and even Russia. They all had the same goal: to improve their English and connect with others. Emma loved listening to their stories, especially because everyone had a different reason for learning English. Some needed it for work, others for travel, and some simply loved languages. These conversations became the best lessons she could ever have. Real, authentic, and full of emotion. Every mistake turned into laughter, and every correction became a gift. One of the people she became closest to was a girl named Layla from Morocco. Layla had a warm smile and a strong accent, and she wasn't afraid of making mistakes. In fact, she encouraged Emma to speak without worrying about being perfect. "Don't wait for the right word," she said once. "Say something, even if it's wrong. That's how we learn." This advice changed the way Emma approached English. She stopped being so self-conscious and started being more expressive. Her vocabulary expanded naturally through practice, and her listening skills sharpened just by being around others and paying attention to tone, rhythm, and common expressions. As the weeks passed, Emma noticed something interesting. She started thinking in English more often during her morning walks, while reading signs, and even when dreaming. This mental switch was a major milestone for her. It meant she was beginning to internalize the language, to live with it instead of just studying it. She even began keeping a journal in English, writing down her thoughts, feelings, and daily experiences. Some entries were short and simple, others more detailed and reflective, but each one was proof of her growth. And every time she read back a page, she smiled at how far she had come. Before she left Toronto, Emma visited Niagara Falls. Standing near the roaring water, she reflected on her journey. She had come from Spain with just a suitcase and a few memorized phrases, and now she could talk, laugh, and even argue in English. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. With the sound of falls in her ears, she made a promise to herself. She would keep going. She would travel to more countries, meet more people, and become not just a speaker of English, but a citizen of the world. Her next stop? Australia. Chapter 3. Down Under and Speaking Up. Landing in Sydney felt like stepping into a dream. The sky was a vibrant blue. The sunlight was warm, and the people walked with a kind of relaxed confidence that made Emma feel instantly welcome. She was nervous at first. Australian English was known for its unique slang and fast pace, but she was also curious. She wanted to hear the differences, to see how language changed from place to place. On her first day, a man at the airport said, "No worries, mate." And Emma laughed because she didn't fully understand what it meant, but she liked how it sounded. It felt friendly, and that was enough. She rented a room in a house shared with 2 university students, both native Australians. They spoke quickly, used slang constantly, and often joked with her in a way that forced her to really pay attention. At first, she struggled to follow, but they were patient and explained expressions like arvo for afternoon or bicky for biscuit. Living with them became an immersion experience. Emma learned new phrases every day, not from textbooks, but from conversations over dinner, jokes during breakfast, and even TV shows they watched together. She started writing down the slang she heard and practicing it in real-life situations, which helped her feel more connected to the culture. During her time in Sydney, Emma volunteered at a local library that offered free English conversation classes for immigrants. She wasn't a teacher, but she helped facilitate conversations, and this gave her a new perspective. She saw people just like her, nervous, excited, sometimes frustrated, trying to express themselves in English. She felt proud to be part of their journey, and at the same time, she realized how much she had grown. Emma wasn't just a learner anymore. She was someone who could help others. The experience made her more compassionate, more patient, and more inspired to continue learning. One afternoon, after a class, a little girl walked up to her and said, "Your English is very good. You talk like the people on TV." Emma laughed with surprise and thanked her, but that comment stayed with her for days. It made her realize that fluency is not about being perfect. It's about being understood, being brave, and staying curious. She had reached a point where English no longer felt foreign. It was becoming part of who she was. She still made mistakes, of course, but now she welcomed them as part of the process. She no longer feared being judged. She saw each error as a sign of progress. Emma spent 2 months in Australia, exploring the coast, talking to locals, and challenging herself with every conversation. She loved the country, the people, and the way language had brought her closer to the heart of it all. But as always, her feet began to itch for the next adventure. She wanted to keep growing, keep learning, and see where English could take her next. With a heart full of memories and a mind full of words, she booked a flight to her next destination, the United States. Chapter 4, The American Challenge. Emma landed in New York City with wide eyes and a heart full of anticipation. The city was alive in a way that overwhelmed her senses. Honking taxis, people rushing by, flashing lights, and endless conversations in fast, sometimes chaotic English. It was very different from London, Toronto, or Sydney. The American accent was sharper, faster, and full of expressions that she hadn't learned before. She quickly discovered that even everyday phrases like "what's up" or "you good" meant something different than she expected. But instead of feeling intimidated, she felt challenged, and that challenge motivated her. She stayed in a shared apartment in Brooklyn with 3 roommates from different parts of the U.S. one from Texas, one from California, and one from Boston. Each of them had a different way of speaking, which made her realize just how vast and varied American English really was. At first, their slang and cultural references went over her head, but little by little, she caught on. They joke with her, help her understand idioms, and made her feel like part of the group. She appreciated how they never laughed at her mistakes, but instead celebrated her efforts. This support helped her relax and grow more confident. Emma took advantage of everything New York had to offer. She went to free museum tours, poetry nights, and even joined a storytelling club where people shared personal stories in English. Listening to native speakers pour their hearts out made her realize the emotional power of language. She started to feel not just like a student, but like a communicator. One night, she signed up to tell a short story herself, something about her first days in London. Her voice shook, her hands trembled, but she told her story entirely in English. The audience applauded warmly, and afterward, someone told her, "You speak from the heart. That's what matters." While in New York, Emma also experienced her first real language breakdown. She had a long conversation with someone from the southern U.S., and she understood almost nothing. The accent, the rhythm, the expressions, it all felt alien. For the first time in months, she felt frustrated again. But instead of letting it defeat her, she researched Southern American English, watched videos, and asked questions. She realized that learning English wasn't about mastering one version. It was about understanding the many ways people use it. That moment humbled her and reminded her that there was still so much to learn. After 3 months in the U.S., Emma could understand most conversations, even in loud, busy places. She felt more fluent, more spontaneous, and more emotionally connected to the language. But she didn't want to stop there. She had learned English in English-speaking countries. But what about learning it where it wasn't a native language? She was curious about how others studied and practiced without immersion. So she made a bold decision. She would go to Japan next, not to learn Japanese, but to continue her journey with English in a totally new environment. Chapter 5, Learning and Translation. Arriving in Tokyo was like stepping into another world. The signs, the announcements, the customs, everything was new and unfamiliar. Unlike her previous stops, English was not the dominant language here. And for the first time in her journey, Emma had to use English with people who were also learning it. It was a strange but wonderful shift. She wasn't the only one searching for the right words. Everyone around her was doing the same. This made communication slower, but also more thoughtful. Every sentence became a small bridge built with care between two minds from different worlds. She enrolled in a small English conversation school in Shibuya, where locals paid to practice English with foreign travelers. Emma wasn't a teacher, but she was a fluent learner, and that made her a valuable resource. She helped students talk about their lives, dreams, and struggles while learning a great deal from them in return. The experience taught her how important patience and empathy were in language learning. Sometimes the words didn't come, but the connection remained. It reminded her that language is more than grammar and vocabulary. It's about presence, tone, kindness, and effort. During her stay in Japan, Emma met a woman named Aiko who had been learning English for over 10 years, but still felt insecure speaking it. Emma shared her own story, her early fears, her mistakes, and her journey across the world. They began meeting every week to talk in English, and over time, Aiko's confidence grew. Watching someone else improve through her support gave Emma a deep sense of purpose. It was in those quiet cafe conversations that she realized her journey was no longer just about learning English. It was about inspiring others to believe they could learn too. Emma also reflected on how far she had come. She no longer used translation apps, didn't write notes for every conversation, and no longer feared new situations. English had become a part of her life, not something she switched on or off, but something she lived in daily. She could think, feel, and even dream in English. More importantly, she had developed the courage to express herself in any situation, even when she didn't know the perfect word. That freedom, that voice, was the most valuable gift her journey had given her. As her time in Japan came to an end, Emma sat in a park under cherry blossoms, watching petals fall gently to the ground. She thought about the girl she had once been, shy, unsure, and scared to speak. And now here she was, having traveled across 5 countries, making friends, helping others, and building a life in a language she once feared. But her journey wasn't over. She still had one more place to visit. Home. She wanted to return to Spain, not just to share her story, but to show others that if you have the courage to speak, the world will listen. Chapter 6. Full Circle. Emma stepped off the plane in Barcelona with a strange mix of feelings, nostalgia, pride, and a bit of nervousness. She had left her hometown months ago as someone who barely spoke English, and now she returned as someone transformed. Everything looked familiar, the streets, the sounds, the smells, but she saw it all through different eyes. Her mind was full of memories and voices from different countries. She had learned so much, not just about English, but about culture, identity, and human connection. She wasn't just bilingual now. She felt like a bridge between worlds. Her first stop was her childhood home, where her parents welcomed her with tears and laughter. As she unpacked her suitcase, she shared stories of London buses, Canadian winters, Australian slang, New York poetry, and Japanese conversation cafes. Her parents listened in awe, not just because of the stories, but because of how fluently and passionately she spoke English now. They remembered the shy girl who had once hesitated to order food in English, and now here she was, confident, eloquent, and full of purpose. Her journey had not only taught her language, it had awakened a new version of herself. Emma began volunteering at a local language center, helping young people who wanted to learn English but didn't believe in themselves. She created workshops based on her experiences, how to learn through immersion, how to overcome fear, how to speak without translating. Students love her energy, her honesty, and her practical advice. More than anything, they connected with her story. Emma realized that her voice could inspire others to begin their own journeys. She didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to be real. One day, she was invited to give a talk at a nearby high school. Standing in front of students, she began by saying, "I used to be afraid to speak English, but I learned that your voice is more important than your mistakes." She shared how learning English had opened doors, not just in other countries, but inside herself. The students listened, some with wide eyes, others with soft smiles. And Emma felt a deep joy in knowing that her story might be the beginning of someone else's. That was the real meaning of her journey. Not just learning, but lighting the way for others. As the sun set over Barcelona, Emma walked alone along the beach. The waves whispered softly, and the wind brushed against her face. She took a deep breath and spoke aloud in English. "Thank you for changing my life." The language that once scared her had become her companion, her strength, her tool for love and understanding. She didn't know where life would take her next, but she knew she was ready, because she had learned the most powerful lesson of all. When you speak with courage, the world opens its heart. Chapter 7. A Voice That Echoes. After a few months in Spain, Emma's story began to reach more people than she had imagined. A video of her high school talk went viral on social media, and messages began pouring in from around the world. Students, teachers, travelers, and dreamers who saw themselves in her story. Some had never left their hometowns, but were determined to learn English. Others had faced humiliation, fear, or self-doubt. Emma was overwhelmed. She hadn't planned to become a public figure, but it was clear. Her voice mattered, not because it was perfect, but because it was true. She began writing a blog in English, documenting every stage of her journey. The cities she visited, the challenges she faced, the people who helped her, and the lessons she learned. Her blog became a community of learners, a safe space where people could ask questions, share struggles, and support one another. Emma answered each message with care. Remember what it felt like to be confused, lost, and unsure. She was not a teacher in the traditional sense, but she was a guide, a fellow traveler on the road to fluency. Soon, a publisher reached out to her, asking if she would write a book about her journey. Emma hesitated at first. She had never seen herself as an author, but the idea stayed in her mind. She realized that her journey wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever tried to learn a new language, everyone who had ever dreamed of speaking and being understood. She spent months writing, pouring her heart into each chapter. It was hard, emotional work, but also healing. Each sentence was a memory, a tribute to her courage. When the book was finally published, titled A Journey Through Words, it received heartfelt praise. Readers from different countries wrote to say how it changed their lives, how it gave them hope. Some said they finally started speaking without fear. Others said they no longer felt alone. Emma felt humbled and grateful. She hadn't traveled the world just to learn English. She had done it to find her voice, and now that voice was helping others find theirs. It was a responsibility, she carried with pride, with her message spreading. Emma received invitations to speak at international events, conferences, and schools. She traveled again, not as a student this time, but as a storyteller. Each time she stood on stage, she reminded her audience, fluency is not perfection. It is freedom. It's the ability to connect, to express, and to grow. Her words reached not just ears, but hearts. And though she still made mistakes, she never apologized for them, because she had learned that mistakes are signs of progress, proof that you are brave enough to keep going. Chapter 8, The Language Within. One cold morning in Berlin, Emma sat at a language learning summit surrounded by educators, linguists, and innovators. She was there to give a keynote speech. As she prepared her notes, she reflected on how far she had come. Just a year ago, she wouldn't have dared to speak in front of a crowd, much less in English. Now, she was about to share her message with experts and leaders. Her hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but from the weight of the journey she carried inside her. When she walked on stage, she paused and looked at the crowd. "I'm not here because I speak English perfectly," she said. "I'm here because I kept going when it was hard." She spoke not about grammar or vocabulary, but about vulnerability, connection, and the power of persistence. She shared how English became a mirror in which she saw both her weaknesses and her strength. And she reminded them that learners don't need pressure. They need permission. Permission to try, to stumble, to feel frustrated, and to keep going anyway. After the event, several teachers approached her, saying her talk had changed how they saw their students. They realized they had been focusing too much on rules and not enough on confidence. Emma smiled, knowing that change begins with small realizations. She had always believed that teaching was more than instruction. It was inspiration. Her message had become a bridge between students and teachers, between fear and freedom, between silence and speech. In Berlin, she also met a young refugee from Syria who had learned English by watching movies and reading books at a shelter. His story touched her deeply. "English gave me a way to survive," he told her. "But now I wanted to help me live." Emma felt honored to listen. It reminded her that language is more than a skill. It is a lifeline. She promised herself to keep listening to voices like his, to keep amplifying the unheard stories. By the time Emma left Berlin, she understood that her mission was not just to share her story, but to help others tell theirs. She began collecting stories from around the world, ordinary people learning English in extraordinary ways. She wanted to create a global mosaic of courage and hope. It was no longer just a journey. It was a shared journey. A journey through words that belong to all who dare to speak. Chapter 9, Building Bridges. Back in Spain, Emma launched a new project, an online platform where learners could connect across continents to practice English in real conversations. She named it Bridge Words, a tribute to connections language had helped her build. The platform wasn't just about practice. It was about people. Users created profiles, shared their stories, and matched based on their goals, interests and time zones. From Brazil to Bangladesh, learners logged in every day to speak, listen, and grow. Emma was involved in every detail. She hosted weekly group calls, created challenge prompts, and even recorded videos answering questions from users. Her goal wasn't perfection, it was presence. Don't wait until you're fluent to speak, she told them. Speak to become fluent. Her energy and empathy made people feel safe. They knew that with Emma, mistakes were never punished. They were welcomed. She celebrated progress, no matter how small. The success of Bridgeword surprised even Emma. Within 6 months, it had over 10,000 users. Stories poured in. A teenager in Morocco gave his first public speech in English. A grandmother in Italy wrote a letter to her granddaughter in Australia. 2 strangers from Vietnam and Kenya became best friends. Emma read every message, often with tears in her eyes. This, she thought, is why I learned English. Not to impress, not to pass tests, but to build bridges where there had been silence. She also invited teachers to join the platform, not just to teach, but to listen and learn. She believed that teaching and learning were 2 sides of the same coin. When educators from different countries shared their methods and struggles, the platform became a space of mutual growth. Emma watched in awe as her idea turned into a movement where words didn't just teach. They healed, empowered, and united. As she watched her dream grow, Emma knew this was only the beginning. She had walked through fear, failure, and frustration, and now she walked beside others. The journey through words was no longer just hers. It was a path walked by thousands. And every day, someone new took their first step. Chapter 10, The Endless Journey. 1 year after she began her adventure, Emma stood once again on the same balcony in Spain where she had once stared into the sky, wondering if she'd ever speak English. The journey had changed her completely, not just in language, but in confidence, purpose, and vision. She had seen the world, not just with her eyes, but with her heart. And she had discovered that language is the key that opens people, that builds bridges, that makes strangers into friends. She no longer measured her success in grammar points or test scores. She measured it in conversations, laughter, letters, and voices. She remembered a time when she avoided English-speaking tourists, and now she was speaking at global conferences. She remembered nights crying over mistakes, and now she encouraged others to embrace their imperfections. Her journey had taught her that courage matters more than correctness, and connection matters more than control. One evening, she received a message from a young girl in Mexico. "I'm scared to speak English. I feel dumb, but I saw your video, and now I believe I can do it." Emma replied instantly, her heart full, "You're not dumb. You're brave. Every time you try, you win." She smiled, knowing that somewhere, someone was beginning their journey, just like she had. Emma continued to travel, learn, and grow. She still made mistakes. She still learned new words. But she no longer feared them. She embraced them as part of the dance of language. She understood now that learning never ends. Language is alive, and so is the learner. The journey never truly finishes. It only deepens, expands, and transforms. As she walked along a quiet street under the stars, she whispered to herself in perfect English, "I am proud of who I've become." The night breeze carried her words into the sky, where they would echo, inspire, and remind others. Every word you learn is a step forward, and every step forward is a victory.